Educational GMAT. Your partner in your GMAT journey.
This is not an easy question again. Last year, by the way, what does incinerate mean? Burning. Yeah, fine, correct. So I think that's kind of slightly crucial to this question. Is the argument clear? All right. So the goal is this, right? Reduce the amount of residual ash Shelbyville generates this year to half of last year's total. That's the goal, right? So which of the following is required for the revamped collection program to achieve its aim? What's the aim? This is the aim. Okay. Yes, guys. Go through these. Not easy. Not easy. Yes, friends. Any inclination that you have? Mind you, you'll not get more time than this on the actual exam for this. Yes. Alpha, okay.
I think D.
David, all right. Chatrika is saying Alpha, Raman is saying David. Okay. Alpha, David.
C.
Baker.
C.
Charlie. Okay, all right. Okay, now let's first understand this through a diagram that I'm going to draw. So how does a collection program work? How does a collection program work? So obviously there are houses, right? There are houses and refuse is collected, right? And then, so this was last year, by the way, this was last year, right? So all the refuse was collected, right? Refuse was collected and then it was sent for incineration, right? So this was, and let's say around 100 trucks were sent for incineration last year. Now, can you tell me what is the process modification this year? What is the process modification this year? Very nice. So again, the refuse will be collected from the houses, right? So refuse is collected the way it was last year, the way it was last year. But now, rather than this entire refuse being sent for incineration, a new process has been introduced. And what is the process? Recyclable stuff separated. Recyclable stuff is separated from this refuse. So that, and only the remaining is sent for incineration, right? Now, if 100 trucks were sent for incineration last year, how many would be sent this year? 50. This is given to us, guys. Now, it's important to understand that this is given to us. That if 100 trucks were sent for incineration last year, only 50 trucks will be sent for incineration this year. It's given to us. Now, how exactly is this reduction achieved? Do we care? We don't. That is up to the waste cycling people to manage, right? Did the refuse this year add lesser recyclable material, more recyclable material? Did uh, did people cooperate in this program? We don't care. It is given to us that if 100 truckloads of refuse was incinerated last year, only 50 truckloads will be incinerated this year. That's the basic baseline that is given to us. How do they achieve that? Well, it is given to us that because they were able to achieve because recyclable stuff from this material, from the entire waste, was separated for recycling. So it's not, the recyclable stuff is not sent for incineration. Now, is the recyclable stuff enough to reduce it from 100 to 50? Again, we don't care. It's given to us that it will reduce to half. Friends, for that reason, it's so important to be clear with the scope of the argument. We don't have to get engaged in this part. This is for them to manage. So now let's look at some options. For example, no material that city service would separate will be incinerated. We don't care whether it will be or not be. Similar cost anyway is out of scope. Refuse, now again, refuse collected by city services will contain a larger proportion of recycled material this year than it did last year. We don't care. How are they able to achieve that reduction of 50 trucks, of 100 trucks to 50 trucks? As I said, we don't care about that. Will separate, it's given to us. There is no element of doubt expressed in this. They will separate for recycling enough refuse to reduce the number of truckloads of refuse to be incinerated to half of last year's number. So this is where my example was coming from, that if last year they sent 100 trucks for incineration, this year they will, right? Guaranteed they will send 50 trucks. All right. Total quantity of refuse. Now, Edward, again, I'm hoping you understand this. Total quantity of refuse collected by Shelbyville City Services this year will be no greater than that collected last year. Do you understand what this is saying, by the way? So last year, uh, let's say total refuse that was collected was 400 trucks. No, let's take 100 trucks. Total refuse that was collected was 100 trucks. And obviously, all these 100 trucks were incinerated last year, right? This is what happened. Now, what Edward is saying is that no more than 50, no more than 100 trucks will be collected this year. No, not necessary. In fact, for all you know, they may collect 200 trucks. And then what do they do? Then what do they do? Recyclable material, right? Recyclable material would be 150 trucks. That would be taken out. And then only 50 trucks would be sent for incineration. So whether this was the same, whether this contains recyclable, no recyclable, as I said, we don't care about it. The whole point is in 100 trucks were incinerated last year, 50 trucks will be incinerated this year. That's given to us. That's the baseline. So now by process of elimination, David is the answer. But again, I have a table for you to understand what David is talking about. So last year, in fact, this coincides with the example that we had taken. Suppose 100 truckloads of refuse were incinerated, and let us say total ash that was generated by virtue of incinerating 100 truckloads of refuse was 10 tons. Now, can you tell me last year how much ash per truck was generated based upon these figures? Very nice, right? So it would be 1 by 10, basically 10 divided by 100, right? So 0.1 tons of ash was generated per truck last year. Now, this year, how many truckloads of refuse will be incinerated? 50. That's given to us. Suppose that these 50 trucks, when incinerated, let us say they generate 0.2 tons of ash per truck. Then can you tell me how much total ash will be generated? 50 trucks into 0.2 tons of ash per truck, that's 10 tons. So clearly they have not achieved the objective, because what was the objective? The objective was that, notice this, reduce the amount of residual ash that Shelbyville generates this year to half of last year's total. So it was 10 tons last year. The objective was that it should be 5 tons this year. And they believed that reducing the truckloads of refuse that is incinerated to half will also result in reduction of ash generated to half. But if this is the case, clearly that objective is not being met. All right, 50 trucks are being incinerated this year. Let's say when this 50 truckloads were incinerated, suppose the ash per truck that was generated was 0.15 tons of ash per truck. In that case, how much total ash would be generated? 50 trucks into 0.15 tons per truck, so 7.5, which is again not accomplishing the goal. So if the goal is to be accomplished, and what is the goal? That total ash that is generated is 5 tons. If the goal is to be accomplished, how much of ash per truck has to be generated? Absolutely 0.1, same, right, as it was last year or lesser than that. Only then would the total amount of ash generated reduce to half. What you need to also understand is that between last year and this year, the fundamental nature of refuse that was incinerated has changed. Because after all, last year, this refuse that was incinerated was recyclable plus non-recyclable. While what has happened this year? Recyclable has been taken out. So this is broadly non-recyclable only. So if the fundamental nature of refuse that is being incinerated has changed, but if they are still hoping that reducing the total amount of refuse to half will also result in total ash being generated to half, then what has to happen is that this one, the refuse incinerated will generate no more residual ash per truckload incinerated than did the refuse incinerated last year. Kind of a mathematics question, honestly. Any doubt, guys?